Welcome back to Plantrevelations, and today I want to talk to you about 3 great trees they stay nice and small and they look fantastic in spring. So the first one I want to talk about is this one. It's called Cornus, Kousa, Chinensis, or flowering dogwood. It has these amazing bracts. In fact, it's not in full flower yet. These will turn pure white and they'll get a bit bigger, and then the little bit in the centre there will turn into a lovely big red fruit, and then finally all the leaves will go a lovely sort of red crimson colour in the autumn before they drop off. So you've got 3 seasons of interest. This one's been in about 10 years, and as you can see, it's not a very big tree, and you can prune it to keep it quite reasonable size. The straight Cornus Kousa Chinensis you could pick up quite cheap, because it would be seed grown, but you might have to wait 2 or 3 years to flower. But some of the more exotic varieties that are a bit either pink, or they've got bigger flowers, or variegated, some of those are grafted. They'll flower straight away, but you might be paying a bit more, like 70 to 80 quid versus like 20 quid. This one is a bit of a brucy bonus in more than one way. I've just decided to squeeze it in. It's not in my original list. This is broom. I don't know which one it is. It's actually self-seeded in the lawn here, and we just left it. The owner of the property decided to leave it, and it's turned into this spectacular plant. It's probably a seedling of a cultivated hybrid. But it will flower now, look spectacular, and then you can give it a light trim after flowering to keep it from getting huge and then starting to get leggy and falling over and getting top heavy. But related to gorse, often confused with gorse, the plain yellow one you see in the wild, but it's not spiky, which is nice. Fantastic for bees and wildlife, so if you've got the room, this is quite nice, but it is short-lived. This is another one of my favourite plants. It's called Abutilon vitifolium. Now this is a seedling of Suntense, and it's a nice sort of lilac colour, but they do come in white, and they come in a very deep dark blue purple, which is the Suntense, which you can buy and pick up. Now they're incredibly fast growing and quite short-lived. So this one has probably been in about 4 or 5 years, and as you can see it's quite big, but it might only have another 2 or 3 years left in it. But they're really easy to grow from cuttings, seed. If you want to know what colour it's going to be, if it's going to be white, lilac or a dark blue, you need to buy your plants, buy a proper name variety. But otherwise they're quite easy to grow from seed. But you do have to sort of refresh them every few years. But they hate too much winter wet, they will rot off in the winter, so make sure it's a nice free draining spot. Ideally protected, because they're probably only hardy to about -12, but otherwise super easy, fun to grow. And if they get too big, you can give them a real hard trim straight after flowering and keep it like, I don't know, 6 or 7 foot if you don't want it to get into like a nice small tree. This is the last small tree / large shrub I want to talk about, and this is Ceonothus, or Californian lilac, which I'm sure you're all aware of. They're fantastic plants. You can pick them up really easily. My favourite is one called Concha, which is a really deep dark blue, deeper than this, although this is a lovely one. Depending on what variety you have, is when they'll flower, but they all flower within a month of each other, and they last around about a couple of weeks. So, which is one of his few drawbacks, is that they are short-lived flowering. But you can clip them to be flat against the wall straight after flowering, like the Abutilon we talked about. Cut this hard after flowering, stop it from outgrowing the space. And they can be short-lived, and again, if you prune regularly after flowering, you can extend their life. Because they're from California and Mediterranean climates, they're not used to wet, rich soil, and they can grow quite big, get top heavy, fall over, or if the ground floods in the winter, they can rot off. So pruning will help that, and hopefully your plant will last many years, 20 years or so. The last tree I want to talk about is actually it's a dead tree, and it's a dead plum here. But cleverly, the person here has planted up a rambling rose called Rambling Rector, and it just goes to show that you can, rather than chop a tree down, you can leave the standing dead wood, which is really good for wildlife, and plant something like this up. And this is going to give a spectacular spring display, just as much as any ornamental tree like magnolia or something like that. This will have little red fruits on it that the birds can eat in the autumn as well, the rose hips. And of course it's fantastic for insects. You could do this with a climbing rose or a repeat rambler, because Rambling Rector only flowers once, but it's just a really useful tip that you can use in the garden. This rose is up an old apple tree, and it's a very old apple tree. It's probably like 70 or 80 years old. Doesn't fruit very well anymore, not very good for fruit. But again, they've used this as climbing frame for this rose, and it still blossoms, so it still has lots of beautiful flowers. So you get the blossom off the tree, and then this rambling rose follows straight on afterwards. So it's a really good way of utilising an old small tree that you've got in your garden and giving it an extra lease of life. And of course, you could even plant something like a clematis at the bottom there, like a clematis verticella, which are really easy to look after, because you just chuck them down to the ground every year, and that would grow about 7 or 8 foot a year, and that will take on from the rambling rose. So that brings us to the end of the video. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.